All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video going to be looking at rookies you should be drafting in fantasy hockey this season. So these are all guys competing for the Calder Trophy. Before we get into the actual video, this video is always presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook, the best place to be locking in your NHL futures, or even if you're betting on football, really the best place to be betting on college football and the NFL. Just so many different options there. Touchdown scores, ladders you can pull on receiving yards and rushing yards. So just a ton of fun stuff going on over there. The link is in the description below to download that. So about 6 or 7 rookies I'll be talking about today, and mainly the high-profile guys, because you're not going to be really looking at dark horse rookies at this point of the season, guys who you don't even know if are going to be on the team. Those guys you can find on the waiver wire, but let's get into the 6 or 7 best fantasy hockey rookies you should be drafting. All right, so the first rookie on my list and who I think will win the Calder Trophy this year is Macklin Celebrini on the San Jose Sharks. Obviously not a huge surprise considering he was just the first overall pick in this year's NHL draft, but if you're looking at the 2 ranking systems or the 2 rankings that I look at a lot when I'm looking at fantasy hockey rankings for preseason, NHL has him at 113, and Matt Larkin's rankings, which we've done a full breakdown of on this channel, is 157th. Those rankings were just updated as well, so I'll trust that one there too, and I think that's appropriate because his ADP right now on Yahoo is 152, and I think that is pretty reasonable for what Celebrini could do for this season, based on what Bedard did last year. I think that's pretty realistic. Celebrini, another top prospect, like one of those kind of generational prospects, I would say as well. Really good compete, incredible puck skills, and an incredible shot. The youngest player to ever win the Hobey Baker Award, which goes to the top college hockey player in the NCAA. He had 8 multi-goal games for Boston, so he can score. 32 goals last year in 38 games played, a shooting percentage around 18%, and he shot the puck a decent amount, averaging about 4 shots, like 4.5 shots, if you want to go there, per game. One interesting thing and a couple narrative points to know about Celebrini this year, he's living with Joe Thornton in San Jose right when training camp starts, which will be probably the best thing for him considering Thornton went through the exact same thing, being the first overall pick in the 1997 NHL draft, obviously over to the Bruins. If you listen to 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman had spoken with Eklund and Zetterlund, 2 young guys on the Sharks who've been playing through this rebuild over the last 2 years, and said they are extremely excited to play with Macklin Celebrini to see what he has to offer in his first full NHL season. Ryan Warsofsky, the new head coach for the San Jose Sharks as well, has had nothing but good things to say about Celebrini throughout obviously drafting him, watching him, the few times he's been able to see him on the ice as well. And he explicitly said he will be driving our team, which is exactly what you want to hear if you're looking to draft somebody, even if it is on a team like the San Jose Sharks. It'll be interesting to see who he plays with. Right now on Daily Faceoff, they have him projected to play with Tyler Toffoli and William Eklund. Toffoli will be perfect for a fantasy side of things. He's obviously a little bit of a liability defensively now. He's just a little bit older, not as fast, but Toffoli had the highest even strength offensive goals above replacement per 60 last season. He only played 270 minutes, but still, when he's on the ice in even strength settings, he is helping the team score goals and bring a positive outcome to that game. That will help Celebrini immensely. Celebrini will also probably be leading this top power play unit, which Toffoli will be featured on. Also a guy you want to have on your power play. The jump from NCAA to NHL can be tough for some guys because it's just completely different. Obviously, Celebrini was able to kind of bully around being one of the bigger guys probably in NCAA, and he's only 6 feet, 200 pounds. But I think all around Celebrini will be the best rookie to have in fantasy this year, and even to win the Calder Trophy, I think he's about 5-1 at fantasy. The next rookie we're going to be looking at is Matvei Michkov on the Philadelphia Flyers. Some uncertainty around him when the Flyers actually drafted him, not this past draft, but the draft before that, when he was going to come over to North America from Russia, and he's here. He is with Philly. He will be playing with the team this year, and I think he's right up there with Celebrini as someone who could compete for the Calder Trophy and someone who could compete for the most points amongst rookies this year as well. Very similar ranking on the NHL side, 114th to where Celebrini was. A lot lower on Matt Larkin's list at 128th is one thing I kind of realized there too. And I think maybe the ceiling or his floor is a little bit lower. Looking at what his stats were, you could see them there on the bottom of the screen. In the KHL last year, 19 goals, 22 assists, playing for Sochi. So 47 games played, he had 41 points. Pretty solid, 7th overall pick in the 2023 NHL draft. He averaged like 4 shots per game last year in the KHL with a shooting percentage right around 10%, which, you know, Celebrini's was 18% in NCAA, but the goalies are a lot better in the KHL. You're playing against men in the KHL as well, so that 10% shooting percentage should carry a little bit more weight as he transitions to the NHL. Michkov, unbelievable puck skills and hockey sense. So good with the puck. He's not great without it just yet, and there are some other things that have come up, but he is just such a skilled forward that you can kind of dismiss all those other things right now. I don't see a world where he doesn't score 40 points this year, to be honest. The only way I don't think he does score 40 points is if Tortorella holds him back. And I honestly only really see that happening at the beginning of the year because Tortorella has known that this kid's been coming since last year. Like, he mentioned in some press conferences last year, saying like the style of how Philly's going to be playing, kind of saying like, oh, we're going to be able to plug and play Michkov or implement it into the system relatively easily. You know, he could get scratched at the beginning of the year for, you know, some bad errors or benched in the third period. I think that's almost a guarantee that'll happen for Tortorella as he tries to teach these young guys how to play in the NHL. But I'm not too concerned over that. I think one good comparison you can see, now a lot of people have drawn the comparisons of him being the next Nikita Kucherov, which is a huge task, obviously, to kind of work with there. But I think looking at Kirill Kaprizov's KHL career, how he left the KHL and where he was in his 19-year-old season that Michkov did play last year, I think would really be able to kind of hone in on what he could do this season. So Kaprizov's 19-year-old year in the KHL with Moscow, he had 40 points in 46 games played. He then went on to play 2 more seasons in the KHL. Obviously, Michkov is coming straight over after his 19-year-old season, but Kaprizov came over, scored 51 points in 55 games in the NHL in that shortened COVID season. Kaprizov, I think he is a better goal scorer than Michkov, but maybe that could help Michkov in terms of the points department all around. He should have more assists this year than goals, probably almost double. If you look at Kaprizov's KHL shooting percentage, it was like 18 or 19%, or it varied from about 16 to 19% through his 3 years, and he's consistently been a 16% shooting percentage guy in the NHL. I don't think Michkov will hit that number in his first season. I bet you will see him around like a 9 or 10% as well, just like he was in the KHL. So I don't see him scoring as many goals, but I think he can contribute in other facets of the ice. There's a lot of great goal scorers on this Flyers team. And honestly, now with Michkov's there, I'd probably say Konechny's the best player on the Flyers, and Michkov could be the second best player. So his ceiling is super high. It depends how Torts plays him this year, but I think he'll have a huge impact right away on this Philly team. All right, so the next player we're going to be talking about is Logan Stankoven on the Dallas Stars. He played 24 games last year, so right under that window or barometer, you want to call it, of being a rookie in the NHL for another season in terms of being able to compete for that Calder Trophy. Same with the NHL. It seems like they've grouped these top rookies all in the same ranking for fantasy, but Matt Larkin has him 217th, so a little bit higher than Michkov and Celebrini. You could see kind of the disparity there. These two guys are just premier prospects that you want to have on your NHL team and on your fantasy hockey team as well. But Stankoven could be an absolute slam dunk this year. Like, this guy absolutely tore up junior hockey in terms of points production. He's obviously a little bit smaller, but super skilled and can play in a lot of different scenarios, which he will have to on this Dallas Stars team. Now, last year played a lot of his time in the AHL, 45 plus games, but he did play 24 games in the NHL, as I mentioned, 6 goals, 8 assists. If you look at his underlying metrics, they are very convincing or very positive, considering last year on the team, if you're looking at per 60 stats, because he did play 24 games, so if you look at the whole season, it's not a great kind of calculation of what he was. So analytically, he had the 3rd highest expected goals for per 60 on the team last year, only behind Wyatt Johnston. If you're just looking at his analytics, like last year, you know, right in the top 3 in terms of expected goals for per 60 on this Dallas Stars team. I think really like right in that same range of Wyatt Johnston, which is obviously great company. Looking at goals above replacement, which is, I think, a very important stat to look at. You know, it's similar to wins above replacement, but it just is more alludes to goals on the ice and what scenarios. There's a bunch of different scenarios that these teams could be adding goals for their team, whether it be the offensive side, defensive side, whether it be in the power play, shorthanded. There's a lot of different ways, but goals above replacement is a very good stat that I will be using a lot more this season as well. So if you want a more description of it, you could look it up, or I could do a video on it even if you want that. But he had the highest goals above replacement per 60 last season on the Dallas Stars team. He had the highest wins above replacement per 60, and he had the highest standing points above replacement per 60 on the team last season. And he only played 24 games, so we obviously have to take this with a grain of salt, but he clearly is electric, and he didn't even really get a lot of time in the power play last year. If you look at his power play minutes, he played 30 minutes on the power play in the regular season, which was 13th most on the team, and in the playoffs, 21 minutes, which was 10th most on the team throughout the playoffs as well. So if he's given a more opportunity on the power play, I think we'll be able to see that point jump even more. Now, opportunity fantasy hockey and fantasy sports is everything, right? So this forward group is very deep. You have that first line of Rupe Hintz, Wyatt Johnson, Jason Robertson. I don't think that's going to change. The second line of Marchment, Duchesne, Seguin could change because right now Daily Faceoff has the third line of Ben, Logan Stankoven, and Maverick Bourque. Now, Maverick Bourque is another guy that I'm not going to do his own segment, but I'll just mix it into this one. He needs to be mentioned because he led the AHL in scoring last year. He's a year older than Stankoven. He tore up the QMJHL and is now ready for the big club. His ADP isn't really even listed on Yahoo if you're looking at the rankings right now, but I think he's definitely a guy you could take as a flyer who could jump in this lineup, just like Logan Stankoven. Both of them will be right there, but I think Stankoven you got to give a little bit of an edge to because he does have 23 more games under his belt in the NHL than Bourque does. And in terms of opportunity, Wyatt Johnson last year, he started a line playing with Stankoven and Jamie Benn and eventually moved up to that first line, and they were the best line, in the NHL, and especially in the playoffs as well. They're very efficient and very productive. So that same thing could happen with Logan Stankoven and Maverick Bourque. I have a little bit more faith in Logan Stankoven, another guy I'd be looking at to win the Calder this year. So I like both of these players, and two guys I think I'd be drafting Stankoven first, but then a little bit more of a flyer on Bourque later. All right, so the first goalie we're going to be looking at is Dustin Wolf on the Calgary Flames. Didn't have the greatest year in the NHL last year, and probably stats-wise, apart from his save percentage, didn't have his best AHL season either, because he had a fantastic AHL year with Calgary the year prior. His goals against was right around 2.1, I think it was, or even just below 2.15, but he struggled in the AHL last year, going 7-7-1 as a record with the Flames. That's not that bad, but if you look at his stats, 3.16 goals against, 893 save percentage. I do like him more than Askarov, who is on the San Jose Sharks now. Obviously, that huge deal, probably one of the most recent bigger trades that have happened in the AHL recently. I do like him more than Askarov because he has less competition in net. Vladar is the backup. He is terrible. He will never be a starting goalie in the AHL. So it's really all up to Wolf at this point. I think the Flames D got better. Last year, the situation for the Flames was tough because you had Markstrom. The whole thing going on with him. Was he going to get traded at the deadline? Was he not going to get traded at the deadline? So a lot of distractions, I would say, last year. This year, they go pick up some defensemen who I think could really help. I still think this Calgary roster, in terms of forwards, isn't all that bad, especially in terms of defensive forwards. I like, Michael Backlund is obviously awesome. Blake Coleman, I think, as well. I think there's some guys in the bottom six that could really help. And then defensively, like picking up a guy like Kevin Ball, I think he will really add to the defensive structure of this Calgary Flames team and really help them play better and, protect Wolf a little bit better too. They had Jake Bean. I don't think he really moves the needle a whole lot, but they returned Uyghur, who had an awesome year last year, Rasmus Anderson, and Daniil Miramanov, who will definitely help a little bit more on the offensive side of things, but definitely, a former forward who will be able to move the puck for this Flames team. So definitely going through a little bit of a rebuild, but I definitely still think that Wolf could have a good year. Will it be his breakout year? I don't think so, but you can expect much better numbers than he had in his 15 or so starts last season in the NHL. All right, Cutter Gauthier on the Anaheim Ducks. His ADP is 136 on Yahoo. So this is the rookie being taken the earliest in drafts, which I think is a little puzzling in my opinion, considering you have Celebrini and Michkov going later than him, according to Yahoo Fantasy right now. But NHL Fantasy rankings have him at 182. Matt Larkin has him at 215, so higher than all those other prospects that I had before, even including Logan Stankoven, or Stankoven was kind of right in the same range. We all know what happened with Gauthier last year. Obviously, didn't want to be in Philly at all. Requested a trade or wouldn't report to camp. Ended up getting traded by the GM of the Flyers, Danny Briere, to Anaheim for Jamie Drysdale and a second-round pick. Gauthier, plain and simple, he is a goal scorer through and through. Last year, Boston College, he played 41 games. He had 38 goals, 27 assists, 13 power play goals. He is an absolute machine, but as you could see with the whole situation that happened with the Flyers, his attitude could be a problem and, could run into some issues with some coaches, I'm sure, as he develops in terms of maturity as well, not just as an NHL player. So that's something definitely to worry about, especially this year with such a young team like Anaheim, very volatile. I think there's a lot of different things that could happen. So I wouldn't be spending a huge pick on Gauthier just because he scored 38 goals in the NCAA last year. His shooting percentage was right around the same as Celebrini's at 18%, but he had 200 plus shots. He was averaging like 5 shots per game at Boston College, which is wild. But overall, definitely someone you still, I think, would want on your team. There's off-ice stuff and a couple other things that need to get figured out before I'm going to cement this guy as someone you need to take in drafts. But definitely a guy you can be considering later on, as his kind of ADP suggests. But at 6'2", 190, and with a shot that he has, I definitely think this is a guy that could have a decent year, especially if he continues and, like Daily Faceoff states right now, plays on the second line with Trevor Zegras and Frank Vetrano. All right, the next guy we're going to talk about, Will Smith on the San Jose Sharks, was the 4th overall pick, I believe, in 2023. Matt Larkin has him at 236th. His ADP is 186 in Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Drafts currently. I agree with Matt Larkin's ranking here because you have to have him, I would say, substantially below Celebrini, or where Celebrini is ranked currently. Celebrini's going to be playing on the top line, so he's going to have better line mates. Smith right now, according to Daily Faceoff, is going to be playing with Granlund and Zetterlund, which are solid line mates, but not as good, I would say, as the top pair. And he won't get as much opportunity as Celebrini, as he is the first overall pick and kind of, the franchise star. Smith is more of the supporting actor of the Sharks team right now. The one knock that everyone says about Will Smith at this point is he's not extremely physical, and it is tough being at 6 feet, 180 pounds. Now, I have heard that he's putting on some muscle and some weight over the offseason, but we'll see how that translates to the NHL game. Not really a high energy player, according to Corey Pronman, who does all of the prospect pipeline rankings on The Athletic. Definitely something you should be checking out if you're looking to draft rookies, but I would agree with that as well. He had some very solid stats in college, on that Boston College team as well. 41 games played, 25 goals, 46 assists, so you could see definitely more of an assist guy than a goal scorer. His shooting percentage was 19%, but he barely had 100 shots last year in the NCAA playing for Boston College. So I think he's a guy that could potentially, I wouldn't say break out this year. I think it could come a little bit later on. But if Warsofsky doesn't like him as the second line center, maybe he moves him around and finds him in a position that could work. He maybe ends up playing on that first line as a right winger. He could kind of find himself in a lot of different roles, and I think that's what this year is going to be focused on for Will Smith. So not someone I'm super high on in fantasy, but could be a guy you take as a late flyer. I would be leaving him kind of off to the side. All right, so the last guy on this list, Yaroslav Askarov on the San Jose Sharks now, got traded from the Nashville Predators. Probably the best goalie in the NHL over the last 2 seasons, playing for the Milwaukee Admirals. Last year, 30 wins in 44 starts, 13 losses, 1 overtime loss. He had 6 shutouts. Save percentage was .911, and his goals against was just under 2.4. He is a must-draft goalie in deeper leagues. He still won't be the best option, I would say, at goalie, but he's in any dynasty keeper league, he is an absolute slam dunk. And the best option that San Jose probably could have gone out and gotten, because this was the biggest need for them, was a goaltender, because last year was a disaster. Now, their defense and defense don't help the causes of Blackwood, and Kakkonen last year. Now you bring over Vanacek, who will struggle probably just as much as Kakkonen did, and Blackwood as well in that same light. So Askarov could probably steal the starter's net from either of them at any point of the season, but an unbelievable prospect, probably the biggest prospect, I would say, since Shesterkin. Dustin Wolf's certainly up there, but everybody's been waiting for Askarov to kind of get his trial in the NHL, and it's just hard. It was hard in Nashville because Jussi Saros has been so good and so reliable over the past 3 seasons, but 6'3", 180 pounds, very athletic, very quick, aggressive, competitive, challenges shooters. The biggest knock to him is that he could be a little bit too aggressive sometimes, trying to make the highlight reel save, but that is something that it can be kind of worked on as he matures as a goalie in the NHL, I'm sure. But yeah, as I mentioned, should overtake Vanacek or Blackwood at some point. Long term, the best for the Sharks rebuild. He's a streamer at this point. Like, I want to compare him to someone last year, and I think the closest thing I can have to it is Lucas Dostal on the Anaheim Ducks, a really highly touted goalie prospect. I would say Askarov is a higher touted prospect than Lucas Dostal, but he'll make a lot of saves. He'll have a game where he stands on his head and makes 50, 55 plus saves and wins the game for San Jose, like we saw Blackwood do last year, like we saw Kakkonen even do, I'm sure, once or twice last year for San Jose, and we saw Dostal do that a number of times for Anaheim as well. I'm pretty sure he said this franchise record for saves in a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs last season. There's nothing wrong with taking a fly-off on Askarov. It's just hard to rely on a goalie like that, who plays on a team like that, to carry your team or to be a goalie number 2 for your fantasy team. If you go with the 3 goalie route, I think this is a perfect option to kind of try him out, and it could only come a little bit later on in the season as he actually overtakes the net from some of the veterans on the Sharks. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this list of rookies to draft for the upcoming fantasy hockey season. Let me know if you want me to do another video on rookies. I could look a little bit deeper at some of the other guys further down in the odds list in the Calder Trophy as well. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to, and I'll see you guys in the next video.